opposition from Canada and Mexico, as well as many U.S. businesses. Kayla Tausche has those details. Kayla?
Kelly, U.S. trade officials this week are expected to put forth new proposals seen as so contentious by lawmakers, business lobbies, and the other NAFTA countries that some have suggested the White House is purposely putting out so-called deal breakers to justify backing out of the deal. Today, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau held a closed-door meeting with the leading trade committee in Congress, an uneasy alliance with both parties wanting to preserve the deal without major disruptions. Following an hour-long discussion about NAFTA, Trudeau visited with the president, who called Trudeau a very good friend, but didn't back down from his prior criticism.
I've been opposed to NAFTA for a long time in terms of the fairness of NAFTA. I said we'll renegotiate. And, I mean, I think Justin understands this. If we can't make a deal, it'll be terminated, and that'll be fun. They're going to do well, we're going to do well. But maybe that won't be necessary.
One idea floated by President Trump: do a new deal with Canada that excludes Mexico. Trump has been congenial with Trudeau and has praised pipelines that transport oil between the two countries. But even so, his administration has sought direct trade action against Canada's lumber, dairy, and airline industry. So unclear exactly how that would work out. The three countries extended this round of negotiations that begins today by 2 days. It now ends next Tuesday. President Trump says the outcome of NAFTA will be known, quote, in the not-too-distant future. But Kelly, like most of his sentences, that one ended with an ellipsis.
Nice use of ellipsis. Kayla, thank you very much. Kayla Tausche in Washington. For more on NAFTA, we're joined by Jimmy Pethokoukis, who's a columnist at the American Enterprise Institute and CNBC contributor, along with Mattie Duppler, who is senior fellow at the National Taxpayers Union and founder and president of consulting firm Forward Strategies. Thank you both for being here. Jimmy, I saw that you called the potential of the U.S. pulling out of NAFTA a, quote, catastrophic success. What do you mean by that?
Well, listen, if you view success as ending this trade deal, which the president thinks this is a very bad trade deal, he's wrong about that. He's wrong that these trade deals are driving trade deficits. Then yeah, I guess that's a success. If you wanted out of this deal, all the things that the president has said that he wants are exactly the things you would try to put in a deal or negotiate to kill a deal. So it's hard to not at least think that he at least wants to give the impression that he wants to kill this deal, hopefully, I guess, to get a better deal. But I don't think we are going to get a better deal by that tactic.
Mattie, do you think he would really pull the U.S. out?
So I would disagree that what we saw from the president and from the administration is a poison pill. I look at them as negotiating chits. I mean, listen, this is a president who really came into the presidency saying he was going to pull us out of NAFTA. He's called NAFTA every single name in the book, and yet here we are 10 months later still negotiating some of these principles. If someone wanted to pull us out, they wouldn't spend all the time negotiating. We'd be moving on to another addenda item. So I don't share really this idea that what the president is trying to do is get us moving away from a trade deal. I think it's very characteristic of what we've seen from him in the past, which is that he really moves forward with full-throated bravado and negotiates from there.
But Jimmy, I did think it was interesting that you said here, and let me just so the viewers know as well, you said with the rest of his agenda stalled, killing NAFTA might be one of the few ways to score a win. Do you actually think that the chances of this are higher now because we haven't seen a lot of those big initiative items getting a lot of traction?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely. Remember that one key part of tax reform that the Republicans proposed was the sort of border adjustment, which congressional Republicans were selling to Trump as a way of dealing with trade without being protectionist, without pulling out of NAFTA. Well, remember, they've dumped the border adjustment, so that's gone. So I think that in itself, I think, heightened the odds of doing something like this on trade. And with health care not happening, with tax reform struggling, I think this actually could be something that he could do to implement what is an important part of his agenda from during the campaign.
Mattie, if you think that these are just opening negotiating positions by the president, by the administration, where does it ultimately land? I mean, where, practically speaking, could there be a result of such a negotiation that's going to be satisfactory to the president and to the partners?
Okay, so I think this is an interesting point that Jimmy just raised, which is what happens with border adjustment, because we have a question of what happens to base erosion and whether or not companies are staying here or going abroad. Now, I would argue that that is a conversation that will continue to happen in tax reform. Something that is analogous in both tax reform and in the free trade discussion is that President Trump has said time and time again he wants the United States to be the best place to do business. And that's how he approaches both the tax reform debate and the trade discussion. So I'm a little surprised about the pessimism both in the markets and in Washington this week about tax reform getting done. The Senate will be back next week. It will likely pass its budget swiftly, which is the first step in tax reform, and we'll see a lot of momentum going on from there. So I don't think that Trump needs a win on trade in the way that James is characterizing it, and I certainly think we'll continue to see momentum on tax reform next week.
Jimmy?
Yeah, listen. I think you need to look at these policies on a risk-adjusted basis. What is the risk of what's happening in trade? What is the downside risk? What is the upside risk? This was already a good deal, and you're threatening to blow it up. And what would be gained? I say very little would be gained, and you're risking a whole lot. And I see this throughout the Trump administration, that we're taking big risks and really end up scoring goals against ourselves for very little potential upside. And this is a perfect example of doing that. I'm pretty concerned.
I think if you're looking at NAFTA and you're arguing that it doesn't need to be modernized at all, that's an unserious position. Listen, in 1994...
the Pacific trade deal modernized it. But in
1994, the internet was embryonic. All of our boundaries on economies...
it, Mattie. Come on.
There's still a lot of work to be done to keep America competitive. I'm not saying we should blow up NAFTA. Free trade is good. Free trade is
blowing
excellent
up all our supply chains is not keeping us competitive. Blowing up those supply chains is not going to make us competitive.
I agree, and I don't think Trump is trying to do that.
Mattie, did you see that Tom Barrack suggested to the president that his motto should be not make America great again, but make the Americas great again?
I did see that. I think that's a creative spin on it. I'll let the messaging
That's like the anti-Trump position.
Yeah, run whether or not that's the best way forward.
All right. Thank you both. Appreciate you joining us, and we'll see what happens with NAFTA from here. That's Mattie Duppler and James Pethokoukis, I should say. Let's get over to Julia Borson. She has some new developments on the Weinstein Company. What now, Julia?
That's right, Kelly. More fallout in the allegations that Harvey